Welcome back, my awesome people. Today, I am honored to be here with Chris Wise. He is a Navy veteran, a former attorney, and the founder of Wise Capital, which is a property technology company focused on upgrading Class C multifamily housing with in-house AI and data systems. Now, if you don't know what Class C family housing is, or if you don't know how AI might be integrated into real estate, you have to stay tuned for this interview. It's going to be amazing with so much wisdom and so much expertise. Chris, thank you for being here with me today. I know it's such a busy time of the year, but I am so happy that you're here with me today. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it and excited to be here and talk to you about all the fun stuff going on.
And you know
Yeah.
what? We are highly looking forward to it. I know real estate is one of those asset classes that hasn't really changed in a few hundred years. So now that we have AI around, it's so cool to see how it can be incorporated. I know many people are already starting to look into smart homes, smart technologies. But yeah, we're going to talk more about all of that good stuff. So, Chris, let's get right into it. So, Chris, can you tell us about yourself? What inspired you to found Wise Capital? And can you provide an overview of its mission, its purpose, and what does it actually do?
Yeah. Background, you did a great job, by the way. I need to start stealing that one. Navy veteran, husband, father, owned multiple businesses in various industries, exited multiple businesses in various industries, started Wise Capital in 2024 with the sole purpose of implementing technology, specifically property tech, in a segment of property or real estate that typically gets ignored. And so the idea behind this was if I can show that we can improve the lives and we're very much social impact oriented, if I can show that this technology can lean into that, then we can prove that you don't need, $10 million of technology to improve the lives of people who are no different than you or I, just working class people who are trying to get in and have a place to stay, a place that they call home, and be proud of that place. And Class C is very much neglected across the board. I think that's a fair statement to make. And we're looking at ways of not only improving, and implementing just technology, but we're looking at finding a way to kind of bring the community back together. So it's not just, hey, here's AI and it's answering questions and scheduling things, but how do we bring that, community involvement back to kind of have pride of ownership? And that takes a lot more than just, a workflow or an AI system that answers questions and schedules. And conversational AI is a big part of what we do. But there's more that goes into it. And so it's really quite the journey to get to that social impact that I'm talking about.
And you know what? Exactly as you said, right? AI is emerging. AI is affecting every sector, every field. So why not real estate? And so now, when we're looking at Class C housing, why did you choose? Why did you choose to focus on Class C and not luxury properties or Class A properties? Why Class C?
Yeah, so when we look at, there's various answers here, but when we look at the market in general, Class C typically sits, especially kind of in the Midwest, is about 38% of the market. Class B being about 40% of the market. When we talk about Class C, Class B, Class A, across the board, for the most part, what we see is that those designations aren't based on tenants or occupancy or deferred maintenance. They're based on when that building was built. And so it's like, the arbitrary date is like 1978. And so it's like, that's the arbitrary date that no matter what, 1978 and older, you're Class C. And then people just ignore it. It's like a benchmark that gives everybody the excuse of, well, it's an old property, so it is what it is. And because of it, the only people who really get affected by that decision is the actual tenants, people who are living there. And so when I looked at this and we started, creating this technology, kind of testing it out, it's easy to say, hey, go into Class A. There's more money there is the stereotypical answer. And the reality is you have the smallest impact in that segment. Whereas if I go to Class C, I have the opportunity to create the largest impact in a part of society that is most of us. right? Like we're working people. It's not like we're sitting at home and living off of trust and just enjoying life. And so when I looked at it and realized, this whole ideology of Class C, there's, whether it be affordable housing or Section 8 or low income, it's like, no, stop pointing to the tenants and saying it's their fault. It's not. The whole definition is based on when the building was built. So if you get away from that and you focus on, okay, how can we improve the technology and do the renovations in a cost effective way that doesn't just change a class C to class A, which is a whole other topic that I could talk about. But how do you put in that technology, do the renovations, and keep it affordable and keep it to where people aren't going, well, my rent was $725 a month, and now with a new lease, it's 3,000. Because that goes against the community involvement that we're based upon, right? And so that's in large part why we decided to build our own tech. Because if I go out and go through third parties, or if I try to outsource it in some form or fashion, you have to pay the markup. And it kind of all trickles down. And it's like, okay, well, how difficult is it to actually build this? And when you get into the weeds and you start really pulling back the layers, it's really not that difficult. And we were just talking about what a great time it is to be alive, because we're kind of back into that innovation cycle where, if you can dream it, you can now sit back and really play with making it a reality. And you don't need 7,000 programmers and all of these massive funds that you might have needed back in the 80s, 90s, what have you. And so just with where we're at today, with how technology is today, and then leading on that social impact, I think we are in a position to make the greatest impact because we do control our own stuff. We control our own technology and our own process to make sure that we rely on the community and make sure that these things are actually useful to them and not just a cool talking point where I can say, look, we built the lock and the cameras and the windows. Like, no, like what else? What did you actually do for the people who live here? And that's what we're focused on.
That's actually a really good point that I'm sure myself and my audience never knew, that Class C is categorized based on the year it's built and not pretty much the condition of the house or what needs to be done on it. And so when we're looking at that, there's a term that called forgotten real estate. And so in the current market, what makes Class C multifamily homes a forgotten sector of real estate? Is it because there's too much work to put in, or there's not enough opportunities for Class C? Why is it considered a forgotten real estate?
Yeah, I always say that they stopped getting loved at some point, and it's like it really boils down to uh, the inefficiencies have kind of stacked up on top of each other over decades. And because of it, you get to a point where a typical investor or maybe an institution looks at it and goes, we could probably get the rents up, but we're going to have to put in, $300,000, $500,000 just to get these 40 units back up to par. And so they almost get scared, or they do really get scared away from that. And it used to be, just a year ago, I was talking to people, and institutions didn't want to touch Class C. I mean, no way. They were not getting anywhere near it. And we're starting to see that that's starting to change in large part because we're realizing that, this technology, ranging again, all the way from AI just to like tangible, real technology, locks, cameras, windows, all these kind of things, lights, it's not as costly as it once was. And so, again, that forgotten real estate really boils down to, it's kind of been neglected, or what I say is there just hasn't been any love in the last 30 years. And if you can go in and fix that and do it in a cost efficient way, you have the opportunity to make a very big impact, because this is a portion of at least the real estate segment that has been ignored for so long that, now just on paper, it scares a lot of people away, institutions and investors, all of that. And the reality is it really isn't as large of a mountain, as it may seem up front. It's one of those old ideologies where, you're standing at the bottom of the mountain, you look up and you just don't think it's possible to go anywhere. Whereas if you just start moving and start making progress and start have a system in place that you start attacking, for lack of better words, you then realize you're three-fourths of the way up. And it just took that first bit of action and progress. And so, that's essentially my my soapbox on forgotten real estate. I can talk about that for a while. It drives me nuts. I hate the saying. It's a common saying. Like there's never enough lipstick to put on the pig. I cannot stand it. It's very common in real estate to say that. And it's like, or you could just fix it. Like, why do you have to keep hiding things?
Yeah.
But that's kind of the ideology that Class C is sat under for so long.
Yeah, and I think with Class C, as you said, right, they're just properties that need some extra love, and I think the reason institutions are jumping in is because they do see the profits that are being able to be made, and of course, now with housing such a big issue both in Canada and the United States, more people are getting involved in real estate, not just obviously to flip. So to stay on that, how do you respond to people who say upgrading Class C properties leads to tenant displacement? So I think the term is gentrification or whatever their term is these days.
Mhm.
But where do the tenants go? How does that operation work?
Well, so this is in large part why we're so, social focused is because, you know, typically, and that was a great example where you get a building, you just tear it down because they've done the math and they've come to the conclusion that it's cheaper to tear it down and build new than it is to fix. And so when we look at properties, we're looking at those Class C, value add type properties. So, well, common term is, they have a lot of hair on it. There's a lot of things that you're going to have to do to get these properties in a way that, I would want to live there or anyone else rather. And so it's it's not technology that is causing this displacement, right? Because if you look at it, if you can, great example is locks, right? If you go to Home Depot, Lowe's, whatever, you can get some of these smart locks for $600 to $1,200, or you can build them like is what we're focused on, and they're $40. Rent's not going up 725 to 1,500 because you put in a $40 lock, right? And you look at the technology that's getting implemented with AI, especially conversational AI that deals with the scheduling from maintenance to property management, kind of goes through that aspect. You're solving inefficiencies. And so when we look at these properties, we're focused on the NOI number, which does not solely get driven from the income or revenue from these apartments, right? So we're looking at the expenses. Expenses are the largest part. When we look at how these inefficiencies have taken place in this Class C segment, a large portion of that is the expense side. I mean, the utilities are through the roof because the windows are 40 years old and they're boarded up, and no one's ever replaced it or put any kind of modern, if you will, window in there. And you can do that in a cost efficient way. It's a whole other topic. You can look at property management expenses. I mean, we talk to owners all the time who believe that they're paying property management 6%, and then you actually go through the finances and it's more like 17 to 20%. And so those kind of expenses, as an example, do trickle down, and then rent has to go up to cover the overhead. Whereas if you focus on these expenses and fixing these inefficiencies using technology, then you can actually reduce the expenses and then you don't really have to move rent, And so when we look at these apartments, I mean, a lot of the rent over time, typically we see between $50 and $100 is typically the rent growth, if you will. You look at the Midwest in the U.S., rent growth is about 3.6% annually. That's the largest average in the nation right now is in the Midwest at 3.6%. National average is about 0.9. So a large part of that is because no one has fixed these inefficiencies. And as you said before, you're in an archaic industry, just property in general. And so because of it, you just kind of keep the status quo and no one ever looks back and tries to see how to, fix it or improve upon it. And because of it, you just keep chugging along and keep doing the same thing. And then we get into these environments where people are concerned about being displaced because they hear about technology. Technology has to cost so much. And it's like, well, hold on. The technology should be solving the inefficiencies at a cheaper rate. If you're implementing technology that is more cost prohibitive, you're not going to have a property for very long, because you can't change rent again from 725 to 1,500 and expect everybody to be able to do that. It's not, and not only is it not fair, but you also look at just the community involvement in the first place. And if you're trying to be community focused, you can't displace the community and be community focused. Those two don't go together.
And the past few months, the common theme amongst a lot of my guests is efficiency. I think now with the advent of AI, we're starting to see a lot of efficiencies in a lot of different sectors. Like I talked to a healthcare CEO, he said the same thing. Efficiencies is what's killing revenue, killing profits. Now that I'm speaking with you, real estate, same thing. Efficiency seems to be the common theme. Now that we're escalating into a more, I guess, AI world, technology world that's assisting us into finding these efficiencies. And to stay on technology, why did you decide to build Wise Capital's technology stack in-house rather than buying through a third party or buying off of a ready-made technology?
Yeah, I mean, the short answer of it is price and authenticity, honestly. And so when we look at it and we go, look, one, I think that we can build better products, and maybe that's ego, but I believe that we can build better products because we're focused on the end user, right? We're focused on that tenant that we know because we're there. We speak with them. We know, hey, does this work? Does it not? Why does it not work? And we're having that real feedback in real time. But you can't replace authenticity, I don't think. And when you look at going through third parties, you don't really control that product, and so you get what you get. You pay what you have to pay on it, and then it does trickle down. Whereas if it's you building it, or in my case, I have a company that helps me build this thing. We're looking at how do we do it in a way that solves the problem that doesn't then trickle down to a portion where we're then having to have this conversation where tenants are seeing 20% rent increases. That's just insane. And so we have to sit back and go, it would be really cool if we had, I was talking about it earlier, it'd be really cool if we had holographic fans. Look, none of our tenants need it, and it's not worth the price of it. And also it doesn't do anything that gives them value right now. And so because of it, we're forced to then what? Raise rents for what purpose? To displace people? I mean, that's not the idea here. The idea here is to get with the community and say, look, here's what we're implementing. We're from a technology standpoint, and we have these conversations with conversational AI. And I know sometimes it's a hot button topic and scary for some, but really you're talking about solving inefficiencies of, hey, my sink hasn't worked in 3 days, and I keep putting in a ticket, and nobody's called me back. Like at this point and where we live, we should have that technology in place to have the follow-ups and have, that's just basic customer service. And so I think, when I looked at, why not go with a third party? I think it's the lack of control of that software, or, AI in a sense. But, the reality is because you lack that control, you're held to whatever that company wants to do. And however they want to implement their product, and you're just forced with that product. And so, for me, I wanted to have the autonomy to go in and say, guess what, this really doesn't work like I thought it would. We've learned that lesson. Now let's transition, and we're not stuck on a 3-year contract with a third party because we thought that it was a great idea and it ended up not working out.
I definitely agree with that. Control, in my opinion, when it comes to business, especially if it's your business, your name, your brand, your reputation, you need to be the one to control it. Especially when you're in a sector that is of service, right? You're servicing people, you're dealing with people, and by having a third party, they can screw everything up, and now you are the ones that are looking bad because they think you're the one that did it when really it was the third party. But no, I think having control of your technology, the IP, and being able to keep things in house is definitely more efficient, of course. And of course, you get to keep the control. And also, now there's another term called PropTech that you did mention earlier. So what is PropTech, and what is the biggest hidden cost in PropTech that most investors or businesses overlook?
Yeah, so I mean, property technology is prop tech, and it is what you think it is. It's technology getting put into property. You can change that word with, smart home technology, and there's probably 100 other acronyms. The largest hidden cost is probably, it's a good question. Um, yeah, it's a tough one to answer, and it's because a lot of the times, we're all looking at ROIs on everything that we do, from a business aspect, and we're trying to find those hidden costs. And it's easy to point the finger at time, right? Like that's the hidden cost is there's so much time put into development and research and product development and manufacturing and implementation. And I think that's the easy answer is to say that hidden cost is probably time. But I think also when we look at just property tech overall, I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not sure the industry as a whole truly understands the greatest hidden cost yet. And I mean, we're a $36 billion industry projected to go. The last numbers that just came out was 108 billion by 2032. Um, I mean, it's a fastly growing industry. At 7 years, that's a massive growth. I think that's almost about a 12% annual growth rate there. And so it's a tough question to answer because I think the easy answer is time, but I think the reality is we don't know yet. It's easy to point the finger internally at things that were hidden costs that we didn't realize, but I think that deals more with implementation than anything, and actually making sure that you're getting the right feedback and not, for lack of better words, like yes man answers where people just want to make you
Yeah.
happy and say like, oh yeah, that sounds great, this is great, it works every time, and then you watch the tenant and they can't work it. They can't open the door because the tech's not working, and you're like, I thought
Because
this
there's
was the
also that
greatest thing. What?
education piece of teaching them how to work it, use it, and I
Yes.
think that's
Yeah.
another challenge that, of course, not only prop tech but a lot of sectors that are
Yes.
dealing with when it comes to incorporating technology into what they already do. And so, other than, for example, the education part, what other challenges did it come with building the software while still running real estate operations at the same time?
Yeah, so we do, for lack of better words, we implement phases, right? So on day one, we're not throwing in all the technology and then telling tenants, "I hope you guys can understand this. Good luck." There's phases that come with this, and so because of that, um, you know, judging what phase you're in and when to go to the next phase can be difficult. It can be very challenging because you don't want to overwhelm people. You don't want them to think that you're only doing this to get some kind of value out of them or there's some kind of hidden agenda or you know what I mean? And that's in large part of the people aspect of this. I mean, property at the end of the day is the people business. It's a hospitality business. You're dealing with people in their homes where their families and their kids are. So, you can't just throw a bunch of tech and expect everybody to be happy because you thought it was a good idea. I mean, the reality is people are making sure that their families are taken care of and there's food on the table and they're taking care of themselves. And the last thing they need is us to just jump in, throw a bunch of tech against the wall and hope that everybody's happy and then leave. So with us, we really focus on these phases, and of course, that's a great comment with education. The idea is that there shouldn't be a learning curve. That's the idea, right? If you're creating technology that has a steep learning curve, you're not thinking about the end user. Because if you have to teach them for 3 hours how to open a door or use a camera or turn on the lights, you're going to have a bigger problem on your hands. People aren't going to stay around for
It's not like
that. So,
IKEA where you can say, here's a manual, here's a box, go figure it out. This
right.
is definitely way more complex and advanced. And I think that is definitely a major challenge. And I think it's a challenge not only with just real estate, but I think when McDonald's first came out with those manual kiosks, I'm sure there was a lot of people just staring at it. Okay, like where do I start? What do I press first? So I think there's going to be a lot of learning curves coming up with a lot of sectors because of the incorporation of technology. And so how does in-house technology help you respond to market or tenant needs as fast as possible? And how do you measure the return on investment based on tenant satisfaction and retention?
Right. So, I mean, the easy answer on the tenant satisfaction is, you keep the tenants there long term, right? And so you get the feedback. We're constantly communicating with the tenants that, we're not just hiding behind a curtain and hoping that everybody likes what we're doing. You actually have to go out there, and it's a strange thing to do, especially as the owner of a property where, you don't get to hide behind a property management company and have them handle any kind of complaints or issues, because there's too many, in my opinion, there's too many middlemen involved. And so you're kind of getting a watered down version as it gets closer and closer to, management, if you will, or ownership. And so, when I'm looking at, how do you implement technology that can be used to solve an inefficiency that the tenants also want solved? I mean, that is another challenge that you have. Whereas, you can sit back and imagine this great world with this great technology that people just hit the ground running with, but at the end of the day, they have to need it, right? I mean, if we sell an apartment, or rather we rent out or lease a unit with no bathroom, there's a big inefficiency there. There's a big problem. They need a bathroom, shower, all of that. And so if we're sitting and going, well, the ROI without having the shower means we get to reduce the water bill. Who cares? You can't have anybody live there because they don't have any place to take a shower and go to the bathroom and all that kind of stuff. And that is a simplistic way of answering that. But the reality is the technology, we can't just throw against the wall and hope everybody takes it and runs. You got to implement it in a way that keeps that tenant satisfaction high. But then also you're creating products, and we're able to move fairly quickly, in my opinion, on, when we see a problem that needs to be addressed and the tenants are mentioning that problem, how do we solve it quickly and efficiency and something that's cost effective to where we can implement it in a manner that solves it and doesn't have this 6 month delay, right? And so a great example of this is, I recently went into an apartment where we could tell just walking through, and we were deciding whether or not we wanted to move forward with acquiring that property. We could tell that there was some kind of water damage in the wall. Like, we just tell, it's bowing out. You kind of see the water stains on it. You would talk to people and nobody, everyone said there's no water damage. There's no water damage. You could feel it it was cold on the wall. You're sitting there talking to the tenant. The tenant's like, there's 100% a leak back there, and so one of the things that we had created in the past, and we have it today, is, for lack of better words, kind of these IoT sensors, right? So water valve sensors that connect into the water line, gauges the pressure, and has a shutoff valve there. And so it detects that the water pressure drops, or there's a leak or whatever, and it can shut off the valve so that you don't have that kind of water damage in the wall. Well, having this conversation with the tenant at the time, they had talked about this water damage, if you will, this leak, for over 6 months with nobody addressing it at all. And then you walk through with the property manager and like, that is definitely a leak in the wall. They're like, nope, not at all. And you like touch the wall and it completely like almost caves in, right? And so you're like, you can't still say that. And I'm not kidding. They're like, nope, we've never had water damage. You're like, we're looking at the same thing, right? Like, you're right there. Like,
You've seen it right there in 4K.
yeah. And there's just these willful blindness, that happens. And so I forgot why I went on this rant, but the reality is,
No, it's about using AI for seeing these kind of things that happen without, it getting to the extreme.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you have to be, customer focused, or in this case, tenant focused, if you will. And the tenants are going to know the issues long before you do, almost all the time. They're there every day. They live there, and so
And many of them may not want to speak up because they're like, oh no, we don't want to pay for the damage, or we don't want to get in trouble or something like that. But if you had, incorporated technology, you wouldn't wait for the tenant to let you know. It will just give you like a little warning saying, hey, there's a leak in this
yeah,
part of the house, or whatever the issue is. And so just to stay on that, so we've been talking a lot about Class C family households and so on, but now let's talk more about the AI function. So of course, AI is in every sector at this point in our lives, healthcare, industrials, supply chain, logistics, education. But now with real estate, a lot of people are wondering, how can AI really help? And as you mentioned earlier, right, with smart homes, you can do things off of your phone and so on. But overall, can AI replace property managers? Like, do you think AI can be an affordable, more efficient way to manage properties in North America?
Yes, I think that AI. Now, let me give it a caveat. So, I think that AI can reduce property management expenses significantly. I tell people that our goal is about 30% reduction in property management expenses just through, the AI that we've implemented. And that's through solving inefficiencies. And just by doing that, you end up getting higher tenant satisfaction. They're not waiting for days on end or hours on end for, a simple my drains clog type issue. And instead it's getting addressed quickly because the AI can kind of qualify, go through our systems and checks and balances and assign I mean, everything just happens instantaneously. And so because of it, you reduce that, for lack of a better word, lag on, I got to talk to the property manager, but of course problems don't happen at, during working hours. They only happen at like 1 a.m. And so I can't really talk to them until, working hours. And of course, it happens on a Saturday, but then it's an emergency, but then they're not answering. But then really the property manager needs to get in touch with the maintenance that's on call, but then they can't get in touch. And so those are those inefficiencies that I'm talking about solving. But then, when you look at how does this get implemented in a way that drives, ROI or, in lack of better words, NOI really. It's about solving these complete inefficiencies that just no one's touching. I don't think you're going to fully replace a person. And the reason is because at the end of the day, while the technology can run and it can solve these inefficiencies, you're still going to need that individual. One of the first things that I built out was this AI that would essentially be a sales agent, right? I mean, it's a leasing agent, if you will, but Salesforce is essentially where, they're contacting, where the AI is following up and figuring out, how many people, kids, how many rooms do you need, figuring out if that fits our portfolio and what we have. And then from there, sending pictures and videos and walking through and kind of streaming what it looks like in real time so that they already get an understanding of what to expect. Right now, that's great, but we live in a time, at least for now, where people still want to physically be there, and so you need that person to unlock the door and to walk them in and to show them where things are and show them how we operate and have that personal touch. I don't think we're at the point where you can just completely replace a property manager in the sense of just throwing in technology and then there's no property management. Same with maintenance. We can solve a lot of things with technology, but at the end of the day, you're still going to need that person to go in there and, fix the sinks and, whatever, patch the walls, paint, whatever it is. We're just not quite there where, and frankly, I'm not sure if AI will ever be there to paint the walls for us, but
No, it's
we're
definitely
definitely moving forward.
you definitely still need that human element. You're absolutely correct. AI can do a lot of stuff, but at the same time, nothing beats that human element when it comes to pretty much any sector or field. It's like I know a lot of people are talking about how AI is going to replace surgeons. Personally, it can help with surgeons in surgery, but I don't think it will actually replace the human element of medicine and surgery because I think you still need that human consciousness, empathy, sympathy, whatever other buzzwords, you still need that maybe AI may not have. And so how does Wise Capital address tenant privacy concerns around data collection? I know a lot of people when they apply to a house or they get a property, it's a simple, sheet that they fill out, maybe do a credit check, so on, and reference check. But now with AI kind of being incorporated, technology being incorporated, privacy becomes an a main topic. So how does Wise Capital deal with that part?
Yeah, so this is for at least my company and myself. The technology that we have is a closed system. It's not a third party shared system, and so because of it, we're not sharing data. On that same note, we don't, I don't like the idea, and because of it, we haven't done this of implementing AI on like tenant valuations, right? In the sense of, hey, build out an AI that evaluates this person based on these metrics and shoot back whether or not we'll agree or not for them to lease the unit. I think that that very much involves a human aspect, right? I mean, just because, you can't judge a person on, one bad thing that happened that they went through, right? And if you build out a system like an AI system, there has to be metrics that it targets and hits on. And because of that, what's the arbitrary line, right? I mean, yeah, we can go and have background checks and do the things that most people are doing these days when it comes to tenant screening. But to have a system, if you will, or really AI answer the questions for the owners in the sense of whether they should move forward or not, I think that's a dangerous slope. I think that implementing that, and we've seen it. I mean, there's court cases on this where they're talking about how you can't have AI just block off a segment of the population and say never lease to those individuals, and that happened unfortunately, and because of it, that's how the case came about. And it's popular enough. I think most people can Google it, but I just think it's a difficult and dangerous slope to go down if you allow tenant evaluations to solely be done by AI, because then you take out the human aspect of it. And
It just becomes very
especially where,
objective. It's just all numbers.
yeah.
Like there's no, yeah. I think the human like that is so crucial, because I know even now people applying for jobs, before a human even looks at your resume, they put it through like a little bot screener looking for buzzwords, and then
Mhm.
those individuals who have those buzzwords get to move on to the next step of the interview, which you could possibly be missing out on some great candidates just because AI didn't find the buzzwords. But yeah, you're absolutely correct that AI shouldn't be the full determiner of things that we do. And for example, if one of my audience members calls Wise Capital, can you walk us through the steps of what happens? So I call, hey, this is what's going on, and then what's next?
Yeah, so I'll back up for a second. So Wise Capital, owns these apartments. So the apartments are under their own companies, and there's their own systems and workflows, right? So tenants aren't directly calling Wise Capital in that sense, because there's their own, you know, for lack of better words, business and structure within each apartment, so that there's the right people there in place that know that apartment, that location, what they have available, those kind of things. So it's kind of a double-edged sword on the question of, if they call Wise Capital, we talk with investors and institutions daily. Those individuals are always interested in, what are you doing? Why Class C? Very much what we talked about today. And then they want to know, how do they get involved? And so we can always walk through that. We do have this 506c fund, which requires us to only work with accredited investors. And, we can go down that explanation and work with them if they're interested in joining us when we, go and acquire these apartments. As far as somebody reaching out from the apartment side, that really goes through AI. And so, there's so many different aspects of this, but the reality, or the easiest way to look at it, if you're a tenant and there's I don't know, just we can make up a problem where, the faucet's leaking. You know, the AI is going through its workflow and seeing, is this an emergency or is this not an emergency? Where is it? What's required? In the meantime, it's contacting the property manager to let them know that unit 102 has this issue. And in the same time, contacting the maintenance staff on call saying that there's this issue. In the meantime, while texting back and forth with the tenant saying, okay, we have a maintenance person available. They can come at this time. Would you like to speak with them so that they can tell you what to do, or, depend on the issue. If they say yes, then it's already connected. And that that entire system, AI has contacted the maintenance staff, called them and said, tenant 102 is on the phone for this issue. Press one to connect. Boom. Now you guys are talking. And then you're talking to a real person. You're not talking to a bot that's saying, just the same questions over and over and cycling you through. So that was probably the quickest rundown of a workflow from AI standpoint
No,
on a maintenance.
I love that because a lot of people don't know who to reach out to. So Wise Capital governs and has,
Mhm.
people allocated to different properties. So you're not calling Wise Capital, you're calling the people that are allocated to your property. So Chris, on this channel, we do have a short segment where we ask out of the box questions. Are you up for it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, perfect. So the first question, if Wise Capital was a person, what kind of personality would it have?
That's a great question. Unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, it would probably very much be, the stereotypical nerdy guy in the back who's just reading books and consuming data.
I
I
love
think
it.
it's not as crazy and exciting as people think, where they're the jock personality and the coolest person in every room. It's very much the consumer of data and the learning aspect.
I love it. Second question. What is the most random app that you have on your device, whether you downloaded in the past or or currently? I know some people have like a sunset app or a meditation app. What's the most random app that you have?
Oh, this is a great question again, because fun fact, I can't stand phones, honestly. Long time ago, I worked with a business mentor of mine who made the comment that if you can't step away from your phone, then are you really free as a business owner? And so that started, this journey for me of, how much do I really need it? What do I actually need on it? So I'll tell you, it's comical because there's really nothing on my phone. Maybe some pictures of my family and kids and stuff, but other than that,
That's
uh,
good.
I don't get notifications. It drives everybody crazy because if they text me, that I don't know until I pick it up.
No,
So
that's good. It keeps
yeah,
yourself a peace of mind because so many people are addicted and glued to their devices.
yeah, just be
Um,
present.
Exactly. Enjoy the moment. If you were not in real estate, business, entrepreneurship, what totally unrelated career would you have gone into?
Oh, that's a great question, because I've been in a lot of different careers and industries, with the military and hedge fund and law and now property tech, and I've scaled and sold off a marketing and sales agency, so I've kind of jumped through quite a few of them. Um, I think if I could pick an industry, if you it's not an industry, I would probably volunteer at like a professional sports league, just doing something,
Nice.
right? And probably analytics, but doing something at
That would actually be
uh,
so fun.
the yeah, just to be a part of that culture of everyone gets excited and rallies around that sports team or whatever, and that's always an exciting culture to see and try to recreate, right? I mean, you just named a Toronto, oh, great example. I mean, Toronto hockey, I mean, that's probably pretty exciting in the area. And just that vibe and that whole thing. I mean, you just have the whole city around you. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And just having that kind
That energy is
of
so wonderful.
yeah, that's got to be invigorating.
No, that's
Yeah.
actually a really good answer. I would probably do something in sports as well. It's like something fun. You're passionate about it, and it's also you get to watch, you root on it. It's something you grew up with, so I would totally pick the
Mhm.
same. So Chris, where do you? So before we end the interview, where do you see Wise Capital in the next 3 to 5 years, and how do you see the future of Class C housing in the same timeline? Do you think it's going to get more popular with investors or people trying to join in? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So, to answer it kind of backwards, Class C will definitely be growing. The main factor that evaluates this is the age of the building. So the longer time goes on, the more Class C properties, kind of that segment grows. And so because of it, you'll see that, we're probably right like 36, 38% right now. Probably in 5 years, we're closer to really being like 45 to 47%, just because these properties are aging and moving into the Class C space. As far as Wise Capital, our intent is to scale quite a bit. The technology that we're building and implementing on our systems and in our properties, we would like to take that public at some point. Now, there's a process to that, and it's probably going to take 3 to 5 years to make sure that we feel comfortable with what we've built and how we've implemented it to actually go to market with it. But that would be, really our 3 to 5 year goal.
And so where do you see, for example, other properties, Class A and luxury?
Yeah. So, Class A luxury, we have a housing crisis, and I know that you've mentioned this before. And because of it, you see a lot of developments happening where, you have luxury Class A, you also have affordable housing developments taking place. And so, I think that you're going to see more and more developments as interest rates drop. You're probably going to see even more developments. And so it really just depends on on so much. I mean, 5 years is a long time when you think about it. But I think you're going to continue to see a pretty steady increase in developments in that Class A space. I don't believe you're going to see a segment change where there's more Class A than B than C. I think what you'll see is there'll be more C. B will be right behind it, maybe a few percentage points, and then A will be the smaller segment, just because of that tight knit qualifiers that you need that typically do involve development to get to that standard.
Well, that was very well said because when we look at properties, we just look at properties. I'm new to the Class A, B, C world. I'm sure a lot of my
Yeah.
audience is as well. But definitely, Chris, we learned so much today, especially with Class C not being determined on the condition of the house, but instead the year it was built. So I think that's going to change a lot of people's minds when it comes to real estate and investing in real estate. And final question before we end off: what legacy do you want to leave in the affordable housing market? Because I know with AI technology, renovation, increasing revenue and profits, it can sometimes get expensive. However, to keep it affordable, as you said, right, instead of buying a $1,500 lockbox, you can create your own and sell it for $40, $50 without having a dramatic increase. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I I don't think about legacy very much. I don't know why, but I mean, if I can get um, kind of pride and ownership in the community, and have the community, be proud of where they live, and kind of take that ownership stake in it, in the sense of, they want to see these improvements. They're doing things on their own that drive community involvement, just because they're proud to be there. That would be a massive win for me. I mean, legacy or not, I think that just having that happen, where I'm bringing kind of that pride of ownership back, is worth the entire thing for me. Just having that opportunity to have people go home, and not, walk in through a door where there's, boarded up windows, and the AC
Yeah.
doesn't work, and the water heater is hit or miss depending on how late you got home. But actually just, be proud, and go in and just really be able to relax and be at home in an apartment that, statistically has been ignored. And so for me, that's why I do all of this. I think that, regardless of how it all turns out 50 years from now, that is what I'm after. I'm after that community impact. That is what we're doing this for.
I absolutely love that mentality because I think human compassion should definitely be involved in business because we see so many investors and house flippers that will pretty much kick out a bunch of tenants, revamp the house, and charge double, triple the rent and have no care for the people. But I think with your attitude, your vision, I think this is the way to go. And Chris, you are definitely going to come back on this channel because we would love to continue hearing about Wise Capital, the real estate market, the housing market, the incorporation of AI and technology, because it is the way we're moving, right? I mean, how many people have a smart home? Audience members, I'm sure some of you have a smart home at home, and your thermometer, your temperature settings can all be done by a phone instead of going up to a wall. So I think we're going to be in for some exciting times when it comes to technology and how much it will affect real estate. So Chris, thank you for being here with me today. The wisdom, the expertise was unlike any other. So I really do appreciate that. Is there anything coming up, any significant events or moments in your world that you want to put out there in the digital world?
Oh, yes. Well, we're always raising money. So thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. It was a great conversation. Really just honestly grateful that you allowed me on here today. And I'm happy to come back whenever you'll have me. And, obviously Wise Capital is always raising funds. And so because of it, we're always looking for partners that are interested in getting into this space and helping us make this social impact that we talked about. So again, thank you very much. I really appreciate you having me on here today.
Oh, not a problem at all. On this channel, we love having amazing guests. We love having interesting conversations. And that's what my audience loves. And so that's what I try to keep bringing on. Audience members, so I will have all of Chris's information in the description box, all of Wise Capital's information in the description box. So please check them out. As Chris just said, if you want to invest, if you want to see the vision, see the mission, if you want to help out, do whatever you can, get involved, please do. I've checked out the website. I'm loving it. I might jump in as well because real estate has, you can't really do wrong with real estate. Real estate is the number one wealth maker for most of the millionaires and billionaires on the planet today. So if you want to get a piece of some real estate, please definitely check out Wise Capital. And Chris, thank you again. We're definitely going to have you on. And so audience, please make sure you like and you subscribe, and please check out the description box. Chris, thank you again. So until the next time, stay ranting.